Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the virtual chapter for October 2025. I am Michael Watson. I am your co-host, along with my cohort, Karen Hand. Say good
Hi
evening.
there.
And
You know, I
we-
brought my third eye tonight. I'll share with you.
excellent.
In a little different place, but I like variety.
Well, yeah. Wherever it works, it gives you the best. It's a point of view, wherever it works from. So, well, anyway, we're great. We're glad to have you all here with us this evening. Before we get underway, we have a few announcements and things that we'd like to share with you. One, by the way, just with regard to this program, whoever is listening to this, whether you're live here with us this evening or whether you are watching it on a replay, you are eligible for credits from the International Association of Counselors and Therapists, IMDHA, and other friendly hypnosis organizations. You just let them know that you spent an hour and a half at the virtual chapter, and they'll say, "Oh my God, we have got to compensate you in some way for that." And so they will give you some CEUs, an hour and a half's worth of credits. And that's all of that part. So we've got some announcements. First of all, let me start the announcements with this afternoon. Okay, the
Okay.
announcements begin with an activity this afternoon. Melissa Tears, our friend Melissa Tears,
Yes.
did an online program with Connie Ray Andreas, who is the, of course, creator of the Wholeness Process and Core Transformation, and a lot of other lovely things, and one of my favorite teachers in the planet. So I'm so glad that Melissa did that. What reminded me to tell you about it is somebody was talking about replays. And the nice thing is, it was today, but there will be a replay made available. I understand. I haven't had a chance to check back and see how to get it, but uh,
I was not able to attend today, but I was registered. And so if you were registered, you can still get the replay. I would imagine that Melissa and Stephanie have that left up for a day or two so that you can still jump in and get the replay. It
mhm.
was free. I mean, an incredible offering.
Free,
Yeah.
free, free. Exactly
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So if
Yes.
you
So
want
anyway, if you could have done that, you should have done that by now. But if not, you can do it on the replay. So that's our first announcement from earlier today. Beginning tomorrow morning, the 15th of October, so a little late for anybody to be registered, but we like to keep you abreast of what is going on. The IACT IMDHA Certified Master Trainer training featuring yours truly is the next 5 days, from the 15th through the 19th of October. We do it twice a year, so if any of you have an interest in becoming a trainer and training hypnotherapists and certifying them through our organizations, this is one of the ways to do that. And so it will happen again in 6 months, and then of course it will happen again next October. So look forward to that if you have a desire to do it in the future. And Karen, what's going on? What is going aside from the news, of course, but what is going on in Chicago tonight?
Oh my goodness. Chicago is so much safer than the news would lead you to believe, for heaven's sake. And this weekend, we're going to have a wonderful conference, Mid America Hypnosis Conference. It's in the northern suburbs of Chicago, and it's going to, I think, be just a real must do event. I'm going to do the keynote, the warm up keynote, welcoming everybody to the conference. And then I'll teach a couple of classes, one with Gary Coles, who is really an expert on hypno-oncology. We're going to teach a class on what happens when things go wrong. This is not the kind of thing you hear hypnotists talk about all the time. Usually hypnotists like to talk about their successes but we know that people do throw you a curveball once in a while. And what do you do? That's what we're going to talk about there. And then I'm going to talk about a quick change hypnotiques. I've got a variety of techniques that I'll be teaching that are quick change, wide awake conversational hypnosis techniques that also double as wonderful self hypnosis processes. So when it comes up in a session with a client, we'll do the technique. They are now empowered to help with that when they're on their own. And that is my goal as a hypnotist, is to empower my clients to do this on their own. And if they still choose to come back to me time after time after time to have me help them, that's fine. But my goal is to empower them so they really don't need me, or so they can do it themselves. That's what's coming up for me. And we've got the Hypnosis Education Association coming up in November. Are you going to be talking about that, Michael?
Uh, uh, I I only uh, I only have I don't even have the date written down for it. I have a note here that
Well,
says HEA.
I believe it's, I'm doing a panel. I believe it's November 2nd, but let me check that just to make sure. It's on my website if I get it wrong. Uh, well, we'll have to check my website because I don't have it in my calendar apparently.
Well, and I will check that shortly, and we will announce it before the evening gets over here. It's a great conference. It used to be a little Central Florida group that I was quite involved in back in the day, and now well, the world changed during COVID, didn't it? So this organization started doing its conferences online for a couple of years, and the next thing you know, they had a big audience all over everywhere. So it is an online conference with a lot of great speakers, not a whole bunch of people at once. It's like one speaker at a time, one program at a time, but
November 8th
great,
and 9th, by the way.
great weekend and a great deal. November 8th and 9th. So it's the
And
hypnosis.
Mid-America is in person, but the Hypnosis Education Association is online, so you can do it from any place. I love online summits. I really do. For that reason.
Yeah. Yes. So it's November, I'm sorry, 8th and 9th, you
8th
said?
and 9th. Yeah.
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 Okay, and then, by the way, I'm going to go back in time once again
Oh, okay.
because the other thing that I wanted to mention is I hope I'm right about this. I think it was October 5th. So it already is in the past. It was the 50th anniversary of neurolinguistic programming. That is, Bandler and Grinder published their book about Virginia Satir's line. Well, and their basic premises, The Structure of Magic, Volume One, was published 50 years ago. And and the rift in NLP, of course, land is world famous. Everybody knows about it, so it's no big surprise. The truth of the matter is that John and Richard have not spoken to one another in 20 years. And so at this 50th anniversary, they did an online thing where they didn't do anything together, uh, and they were in separate locations, but they both sort of told their stories about the beginning of neurolinguistic programming. And the thing that I really appreciated about it, so for those of you who are into the soap opera, and because I have connections with these people specifically and this history specifically, it's meaningful to me. But what I thought was really beautiful is that John Grinder said he really was appreciative of what Richard Bandler was capable of doing and working with him because he said Richard Bandler did Fritz Perls better than Fritz Perls. And they were modeling Fritz. And Richard said that the reason that he went to work with John Grinder in the first place was that John Grinder was the greatest syntactician in the world at that time. So I thought these were lovely things for them to say about and to each other. And they told a delightful story and really got clear about the distinctions in their methods and their particular working. So it was a great thing. There are replays out there. I can get one for you if anybody just even sends me a message or something. flhypno@outlook.com. I'll be happy to send you a link to a captured video of that event because it was really very cool.
That's a
So
good
there,
thing.
so
While we're on that subject, Michael, I forgot to mention that Richard Bandler is a keynote speaker at Mid-America this weekend, and
Mhm.
he's going to be doing a full day workshop on Monday following Mid-America. And Bandler doesn't teach all day long. He teaches a while, then he has his disciples teach a while, but he has guaranteed the conference that he will be teaching the full day. He will be doing the full day on the post conference. So that's pretty impressive, I got to say. I got to
yeah,
give it to Rich Guzzi on that one.
yeah.
Chase Hughes is also here if you're a Chase Hughes follower. He's also coming to Mid America.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what Richard Bandler has to say in Chicago
He will be.
when he's got a whole day to do that. So,
I'll
yeah,
report
I
back to
cannot wait. I hope there will be some kind of recording available of his presentation. By the way, uh, knock on wood, right?
yeah.
You know anything about that or no?
Well, I know that his keynote will, of course, be recorded and made available, but I don't know about his workshop.
Ah,
He's
okay,
getting a lock on that. Who knows?
lovely. Okay, and then one last thing, November 22nd. Oh my God, it's funny. My brain always does this. This is John F. Kennedy Day. Of course, the assassination day, and I always remember that day. But better things are happening in the world on that day because, as a matter of fact, that is the first day of the 2-day weekend, which is the Certified Stress Management Consultant Training for IACT, also another online program that I do, and so 2 days online stress management consultant, and some great new material actually this time. We're continuing to expand and evolve the training, and we're very excited about it. So if you have an interest in that, getting certified as a stress management consultant, this would be the place to do it. Now we have just commercialed our ass off. So, so, so I think on that note, I would like to direct your attention, ladies and gentlemen, over to the center ring where my good friend Karen Hand has just set up because I know she has something really interesting, exciting to share with us.
I have something a little fun to share with you. You know, like I said before, I like to empower my clients. So I teach my clients a lot of self-hypnosis techniques, though I don't do ritualistic self-hypnosis. I don't do much ritualistic hypnosis. Nothing wrong with it. I'm just telling you what I do. So I don't do a lot of, you've got to put yourself in a place where you can relax and do hypnosis. I teach my clients to use hypnosis on the spot when they're making decisions and redirect their attention and use it in the real world. So I also get a lot of my information from things outside the hypnosis world. Some of my best techniques I got from Tara Brach in the Buddhist book Radical Acceptance. I've gotten techniques from all over the place. This particular technique that I want to share with you tonight, I got from a meme on Facebook. And the meme intrigued me so much, I said, I'm going to turn that into a technique and see how well it works. So I want you to play along with me now, and let's find out how well it works, if you don't mind. Anybody here have any worries? Anybody have any worries? Okay. You don't have to share your worries with us, but if you have worries every now and then, I would like to share with you that worry is our most useless emotion. It is a misuse of your imagination because worry is just imagining something that hasn't happened yet. And since you're really good at imagining things that haven't happened yet, you can imagine all sorts of things that haven't happened yet. But worry is imagining the worst case scenario. So I wonder what might happen if you imagine the best case scenario instead. Well, that is the fastest way to alleviate worry is to recognize that you're doing it using your imagination and saying, well, since I'm here, I might as well imagine the opposite or the other thing instead. Boy, isn't that cool? And when you train yourself to do that, it becomes instant. Sometimes, though, it takes a little training. Sometimes it takes a little ritual. So let's apply a little ritual to this. Let me share my screen really quickly, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So this is my meme technique. The meme was basically fold your worries into paper planes and turn them into flying fox. I thought that was funny. It made me laugh. I think laughter is the best medicine. So it made me laugh. And I thought, well, wait a minute. If we can laugh about our worries, maybe we can do something about it. So if you don't mind, if you have a piece of paper, I'd love for you to take a piece of paper. It can be a little piece of paper. It can be a Post-it note. It can be anything. By the way, I'm giving this, I had these printed up and I'm giving these away in the swag bag at Mid-America as a little self-hypnosis technique. So on one side, it's got the meme, fold your worries into paper planes and turn them into flying fox. And on the other side, you've got a paper plane drawing or outline. So on a side of piece of paper, just write your worries. Write your worries down. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. If you're not worried about anything, maybe you want to let go of a limiting belief. Write that there. Just write your worries down. And I will kind of patter back here. I was so interested to watch the gallery. As I sat here, paused to see if anybody would look up. And several of you looked up. What's going on? What am I missing? That is the importance of a pause in hypnosis once in a while. It brings attention back. But I'm going to pause or patter. The patter helps your client remember that you were there, that you were still connected. So I'm pattering just to give you time to write down those worries. And right now I can see, and I'm not trying to apply pressure to Jen Pet, but I can see Jen. And so when I see her look up as if she's finished writing down her worries, we'll move along. Thank you, Jen. I didn't mean to put any pressure on you. And I said I would give you a couple of minutes. But the whole goal is to write it down here. And now let's take that piece of paper and fold it into a paper plane. All you have to do is fold it in half down the center. Take the top corner, fold it down to the middle. Take the top left corner and fold it down to the middle. So that you got your paper looking like this. Fold it together. And then take this outside edge and fold it over so that it looks like that. Now we're making the wings of the plane. Now that you have your plane ready to fly, you can be as fancy about this plane as you would like to. But now that you have your plane ready to fly, just take that old thing and turn it into a flying fuck and release it. Just let it go. Right at me, Connie. Thank you. I love that. I'm going to pick mine up because I'm going to be needing this in a moment. And now let me get rid of this share. Everybody knows how to do that now. So I'd really be interested in hearing some feedback on that. I'd like some feedback on how well that worked for you. And then I'm going to break it down and unpack it a little bit. Anybody want to share? Anybody have some fun with that? Okay, Trudy, you want to share? Just you're muted, so unmute yourself.
It felt really releasing. Yeah, straight away, as soon as I threw it, something dropped off my shoulder, both shoulders.
Isn't that interesting? As soon as you threw it, something dropped off of your shoulders. Now, let me ask you, Trudy, was that hypnosis?
I've worked with Conny a lot.
You've worked with Connie a lot, so you're going to say, yes, that is hypnosis. Yes, I would say that is hypnosis. Not everybody believes that that is hypnosis. Trudy, thank you very much. I'm so thrilled that that worked well for you. Anybody else have something you want to share about that? Yes, Shelley.
Yeah, I noticed it before you even did anything, just the picture of it. I could picture instantly, and okay, I'm done. All those things on my list kind of dropped away.
So you didn't even need the paper,
No,
just the imagination.
just the idea of it.
And isn't that interesting?
Go figure.
Go figure. We are always using our imaginations. We are always practicing self-hypnosis every moment of every day. Everything we tell ourselves is self-hypnosis, whether you count yourself into it or not. If we say that we can, we can. And if we say we can't, we're also right about that, which whatever you tell yourself will come true. Whatever you tell yourself about the outcome of an event may or may not come true, but if you worry persistently about it, you are just exercising your imagination. And if we want to really get down into some hypnosis certification talk, you're positively hallucinating things that haven't happened, right? That's positive hallucination. You're making up something that doesn't exist and creating a picture out of it, making it real. So that's deep hypnosis. That's positive hallucination, using the imagination to create something. The moment you recognize that you are using your imagination, that is the moment that you have an opportunity to use it in an entirely different way. That is the moment you have the opportunity to say, wait a minute, as long as I'm making shit up, how about if I make this stuff up over here? Right? As long as I'm making stuff up, why don't I make up something else? And if that doesn't work, the reason the paper works, let's break that down a little bit, and what makes that technique useful is because when we take the thought and write it down on paper, figuratively, and maybe literally too, we're taking it out of our mind and putting it in front of us. That's placing us into an observer position, rather than a first position. So we're taking the thought out of our head, putting it in front of us where we can observe it. That changes perceptual position inherently. We're looking at it and observing it. That gives us distance. We're now dissociated from that element. And the act of writing it down on the paper uses a different part of the brain than the act of thinking about it. So we're also incorporating other parts of the brain into this thinking process, opening up the brain to more possibilities. Once we get it written down, and then we have the rest of the trick to do, the rest of the technique, the rest of the ritual, now we're folding the paper. Now we're folding the lines, and it takes some concentration. It takes some focus to fold that into a plane. It doesn't take a lot of intense concentration, but it takes some focus. And since we can't possibly focus on two things at the same time, our brain is capable of focusing on one thing at a time. That act of doing something is a kinesthetic body movement, and it's an act of doing something. And so it takes away much of it, puts the focus there and takes the focus entirely off of what we were worrying about or thinking about it. Then we pick it up and we toss it away. The release, a figurative release, letting it go. And all of those figurative elements make pictures in the brain and go along with the imagination that we're already having. Michael, it seems as if you're wanting to say something, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. You're muted, though. You're muted. Wait a minute. You're muted.
Well, no, that was lovely. I didn't want to take your last couple minutes, which is why I was doing this.
I'm done. No, I'm good. We're good. So,
I'll
yeah.
tell you what was so lovely about it. And I mean, in addition to everything that you know was lovely about it, I wonder if it occurs to you, and it probably does because you're such a sharp lady, that the activity of the ritual, the making the airplane and the folding it away, is a series of anchors that I haven't actually collapsed since I was a child playing with paper airplanes, and it's completely associated with all sorts of wonderful things as well. So how nice to have that in there, just in that way as well.
You know, we can do all sorts of things. We can write something down and tear it up. You can set fire to it. There are fire rituals. There are all sorts of things. Those rituals, whether it's long and drawn out or short and sweet, work to release, to do something. It gives you a task. It occupies the conscious mind so the subconscious mind can clear out or do something else. It's a wonderful little thing. So I like it because it's fun, it's quick. Many times it elicits a laugh, and the laughter is a great way to release or to change your mind or to do anything else. And when I can involve a little bit of artistry, I want to hear from my friend Jacob. He is a master of artwork. I want to know what you think about that, Jacob. Tell me what you think about it.
Karen, I thought it was wonderful. I wanted to share. I think that the structure of the activity, making a paper airplane, which was so familiar, allowed me to write down the worries, like to acknowledge subconscious worries that, I've been putting energy into, but I haven't really acknowledged before. And it was so easy to write them because they were going to get folded up into a paper airplane. Like it was part of a game. So I think that the structure of it made something that would be, I think, scary for me, scary for a client to confront all of their worries was so easy. It was so nice. So
That's
I
a
think,
beautiful thing. Thank you for
you know,
saying so. I called on Jacob because he does a lot of hypnosis and artwork, and it's brilliant stuff. So when I can, made me think of him when I'm, oh my gosh, I'm doing art and hypnosis together.
when you talked about it, Karen, like when you're folding the plane, like you have a very specific, measured task to do. You get lost in, it's such a great break, and you get lost in a creative process.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. It's that kind of thing, though that will be in the swag bag at Mid-America, so I won't be teaching that in the quick change hypnotiques, but it's that kind of thing that I like to do with clients that gives them an activity to do. And the way I hypnotize a client when I do that, my induction is very simple. Play a game with me. That is the entire induction. Play a game with me. And once that suggestion to play a game with me is accepted, the conscious mind gets out of the way. The playful imagination can come into play. And oh, yeah, I can do that. Let's play. It becomes playful and fun, and hypnosis ensues, whether you like it or not, or want it to or not. And so that's what I'm sharing. I've got a lot of little techniques that I use with that to teach things, to empower my clients, and that's what I'll be sharing at Mid-America. And I wanted to share a piece of it with you. I will report back to you next month on what I learned from Richard Bandler. By the way, my NLP practitioner certificate is signed by Richard Bandler, so it's a real prideful thing for me. I know that's one of the 7 deadly sins, but so be it. I probably got more on my list than that one. All right, so now everything that you have been waiting for, it's time for, and the time has come for me to introduce someone who came to my attention through my good friend Dan Candell. And he told me about a year ago, he said, oh my God, you have got to get to know this woman. She is brilliant. And I couldn't wait. And yes, indeed, she is. I believe everything Dan Candell tells me. And this too is true. Let me tell you about Conny. And boy, I'm going to do my level best to make sure I get this right. Conny, please don't kill the messenger. Conny Wladkowski.
Yeah,
Wladkowski. You say
it's
it.
close enough. Wladkowski.
Wladkowski. I tried. I practiced it today, Connie. I want you to know I practiced it. And I knew that when I was under pressure, this is what would happen. And since I knew it, it came true, did it not? There you go. Connie's a hypnotherapist, hypno coach, author, and international speaker. She specializes in anxiety and trauma relief. And she's the creator of the SHINE trauma release process. That's a powerful approach to healing from trauma without regression. And I'll put a link in the chat in a moment where you can get a hold of that. With over 20 years of experience in multiple modalities combined with her own personal journey of overcoming trauma and anxiety, Connie's developed transformative techniques that help clients break free from the past without having to go back and relive it. Say hallelujah. Having personally experienced the profound impact of anxiety and trauma, she understands how overwhelming it can be, which is why she's deeply passionate about guiding others from merely surviving to truly thriving. So, Connie's here to talk about healing from difficult or traumatic experiences without regression. And before we get right into the meat of it, Connie, what I love to start out with is, would you please let us know, please tell us how you came to hypnosis? What intrigued you about this modality and what brought you to hypnosis?
Well, what happened to me was as growing up, I experienced trauma myself, and that really affected me in almost every area of my life. I had no confidence. I had no self-belief. I couldn't even walk into a room full of people and say hello. And on top of that, I was suffering from anxiety. And as the years went on, the anxiety really started overtaking my life. I was always worrying. I was always overthinking, panic attacks. So I sought help in the traditional therapy approach. But that didn't really work. I tried alternative things as well, all the way up to medication. But nothing really gave me that, I guess, long-term relief that I wanted, that I needed. So for many years, I just kept surviving. And at that point, my daughter was a year old, my firstborn. The anxiety was so bad that I used to wake up pretty much every night having a full-blown panic attack. That feeling of, when you're getting this heart attack, uncomfortable feeling. Then I would wake up the next morning exhausted, obviously, had no patience for my little 1-year-old, was never present for her. I was always worrying and overthinking. And there was a specific moment where I was on holidays with my family, and my husband and her, they were playing on the beach and they were having fun. And I was sitting on the side this whole holiday. And I can't even remember what I was worrying then, because I always found something to worry about. But I was at the point where I was sitting there, and I remember I was crying, and I looked at them, and I'm like, I can't be part of that. I don't know what's wrong with me. And that's when I decided, okay, well, I need to try something else. Like, that's not good enough. That's not good enough for my 1-year-old. That's not good enough for my family and for myself. And then I started reading up about hypnotherapy. And I thought, all right, well, got nothing to lose. But it was like my last resort. And I was a bit of worry that what if that doesn't work? Is there even anything else out there that I could try? But I did it. And I did it mainly for my daughter. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna find a hypnotherapist. So I tried hypnotherapy. And within weeks, the anxiety got less. And within months, I had no more panic attacks. And that was such a life-changing experience for me, that something that was such a big problem for me, I was suddenly able to overcome. So I decided to change my career. I've actually got a law degree and become a hypnotherapist instead. And I did a lot of trainings. I read a lot of books and watched a lot of videos on YouTube, because prior to that, as a young girl growing up, I already sought some alternative stuff. I was doing Reiki, I was doing crystal healing, but none of that stuff gave me that relief as hypnotherapy did. So I was like, okay, that's the one thing that I really want to do. That's the one thing that's helped me. So I did all the trainings and I did everything, but I never saw a single client. And it wasn't because I didn't believe in hypnotherapy. I just didn't believe in myself. I mean, I was too scared to see clients. And at that time, yes, I overcame the anxiety, but I still had that unresolved trauma. I still had no self-belief. I still had no confidence. I had a massive fear of speaking in front of people, or I would even say I was scared to be seen and heard. I always wanted to blend in. So I just kept doing trainings and never seeing a client until in 2018, probably the biggest challenge of my life. I traveled to Austria. That's where I'm from. I live in Australia, but my family is in Austria. I traveled to Austria to see my parents, and suddenly out of the blue, my dad passed away. And my dad was a really close supporter, and he was always the one that was supporting me and grounding me. And when I had a worry, I would always come to him, and he always had a way of making me feel calm. And losing him so suddenly was big for me. I felt like I lost ground under my feet, and anxiety came back. So I went back to anxiety medication to get through the funeral and whatever I had to get for the first few months. And then I was like, okay, again, that can't be it. Let's go back to hypnotherapy. That's helped me once. So I went back to see a hypnotherapist, and that's when I decided, all right, I'm not going to lose any more time. I'm not going to waste any more time. I gotta do what I want to do, and that's helping people. So I was like, I'm going to work through that unresolved trauma. Now, one of the reasons why I was too scared to work through it was because I didn't want to talk about it over and over again, because I had come from the approach where I talked about it. And I thought that this was the only way to heal from it at the time. So I decided, all right, let's search and find a better and easier way to overcome trauma. Because if I feel like that, there's going to be a lot of people that are feeling the same way, that they have been in the approach and have talked about it and haven't been able to overcome it. And that's when I decided, all right, let's learn more about the brain and the neuroscience, and I started working on all of that, on all of those processes myself, and that's when I started becoming more confident, and I found my worth and I found my voice, and that's when I decided to quit my full-time job and become a hypnotherapist and really specialize in trauma and in anxiety relief, because they're both things that I've experienced. And that's when I've also created my 5-step Shine trauma release process, which everything that I've learned, everything that I've experienced, everything that I felt like has worked for me, and obviously now over the years for my clients, and everything that I felt like was lacking, I put in my 5-step Shine trauma release process. And yeah, then I've written a book about it. And I guess the next step was overcoming the fear of public speaking. That was one big thing for me in the last few years. And now, I travel all over the world and present, and that's where I met you. And I presented many conferences, and I always talk about healing without regression. So that's my main thing. Sometimes I give talks about non-traumatic experiences or childhood or whatever. But yeah, today we are going to talk about how healing from trauma, I guess, is possible without regression.
I'm going to have you launch into that. I just want to say how amazed I am because I met you after you overcame all of these hurdles. And it's hard for me to even believe that you might have been afraid of standing in front of people and talking or engaging with people because you do it so incredibly well. So I get it. I get it. I just want to give you that compliment. So, you know what? I don't even need to ask you any questions, Connie. Just launch off into it. Tell us what you want us to know, what's important to us. I've got some questions that I'll jump in and ask if I need to, because I was trained, like you said, you went through it. I was trained in a protocol where revivification was required, right? And in order to be a real hypnotist and in order to get to the problem, you had to have the client revivify the trauma. I did the protocol as instructed, and until it didn't work for me, and it didn't work for me, Connie, in a big way when a woman came in with some questions about some things. We went through the age regression, and she went back to a time when she was 8 and was raped by 3 boys in the neighborhood. And that was revivified. And that was how I learned. I'm sharing with you a mistake, right? That's how I learned you don't have to revivify anything, especially if it's a traumatic situation like that. Oh my God, why would you ever do that to a human being? There's so many other ways. So thank you for keeping us from forcing a client to go down that horrible path. And please tell us how to get there without the revivification.
Well, there's two main things I want to talk about. I want to talk about my SHINE protocol, but before I actually want to talk about the neuroscience. You know, why is or how is healing from trauma even possible without regression? And the base of all my work, so every part in the SHINE protocol and how I work with all my clients, is the therapeutic memory reconsolidation. And I think it's really important to understand the steps about it and how to go about it, because then anyone can really take that on board and use that with their own clients without having to learn a new protocol. Because the interesting thing is, most of the things we're already all doing, a lot of the processes, you know, people learn in trainings have those steps underneath it. But what I did when I started searching for that better and easier way, I started looking at, okay, why did this trainer tell me to do it this way? Why is this protocol this way? Why am I saying this in this point of the protocol? And when I started dissecting it and really understanding it, that's when I started be able to incorporate that with my own clients. So when we look at the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, what happens is when we activate a memory, it gets stuck out of that stuck consolidated state, and all the elements of the memory become malleable. And with the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, we can actually change the emotional track of that memory, the implicit learning of that memory. Now, in order to understand that, I think we need to talk about memory for a minute, because people think, or people often think, that memory is a recorded movie of an event that we can replay in our head. But if we look at memory, memory is actually a recreation process. So when someone, let's say, recalls a memory, it gets pulled from the different parts of the brain and from different region, and it gets put together, and it creates that thing called memory. Now, the interesting thing about memory is it usually changes every single time we recall it. So it gets pulled out of that stuck consolidated state, and then it becomes malleable, and it gets injected with new information. And the way a memory changes is when someone, let's say, recalls a memory and has a change in perspective. So let's say for me, if I recall, let's say, the traumatic experience, now I'm working with that, I'm helping other people with it, I've created a protocol, I look at that memory completely different. I see it differently because of my own growth and learning. It's still the same event, but I now recall it differently. Now, it could also happen that I might say something about my memory, and then Karen, you tell me about a childhood memory, and then I'm like suddenly taking a little bit of your information into my own memory. Or let's say you talk with a sibling. I mean, how many times do we talk with a sibling about a memory from 20 or 30 years ago? and you have a completely different perception of how that went about. And everyone is like, no, but my memory, I remember it exactly. You don't remember it. And the reason why this happens is because those changes are so subtle that we don't realize that it's happening, because we don't realize that the changes are happening. So we keep thinking, okay, well, our memory is the one that's the true and that's the real memory. And I actually wanna, when I talk about the process today, I actually want to talk about the client from the book. So I've published a book because I always find it easier, and I also had that feedback from conferences that people said to me, "Oh, I love how you use a specific client example when you talk about the process and when you talk about the steps." So in the Shine book, this is about my client Victoria and how I've helped her through the Shine protocol. But what happened with Victoria? So she experienced a traumatic event. Now, I don't know any details about it. And that's the great thing about this process. And then if you happen to read the book or purchase the book, you will see we don't know the details about the event. Now, what I know is what are the effects from the event, because that's why a client comes to see us. A client doesn't say, hey, heal me from trauma. They usually come because they're suffering from anxiety or PTSD or depression or whatever it may be, which is usually the result from the trauma. So she experienced PTSD and depression and anxiety and agoraphobia and insomnia and night terrors. And she had already been in the traditional therapy approach for multiple years. So doctors, psychs, medication. She said she was only getting worse. So that's what was her words when she contacted me first. She dreaded her appointments because she didn't want to talk about the story over and over again, because she's done that for the last few years and she felt like it hasn't really helped her. And one of the reasons why she did reach out was because she had to attend some appointments in person. Now, prior to that, she did most of her appointments online because she had severe anxiety of leaving the house, of facing people, of going to appointments. So whatever she was able to do online or over the phone, she did online over the phone. But there was something coming out that she had to attend in person. So that's how she reached out to me. Now, when we look at that example, Victoria, so she has panic attacks and anxiety when she has to leave the house. She wants to go out again and she has to attend those appointments. And that a client like that comes to me. Of course, you could regress them back to the initial sensitizing event, to that traumatic experience. Or we could use a recent or a memory of a recent time where she had been feeling this way. So I could say to her, okay, well, when was the last time you felt like that? When was the last time you actually had to leave the house to attend an appointment in person? And we can use that. Because when we look at the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, we need to access the neural network of the problem. It lights up. The moment it accesses, the neural network lights up. And the way we do it is by asking a client, when was the last time or when was a recent time you felt like that? Then we introduce a new information. Okay, so how would you like to feel instead when you're out? And then we can say, okay, well, what is it like when you're feeling like that? Let's say the client says the last time, or Victoria said the last time she went to the pharmacy to get her blood pressure measured. Let's use that as an example. So I'm like, okay, well, next time when you go to the pharmacy and you get your blood pressure measured, how would you like to feel instead? And we spin it in a couple of times in hypnosis, or with the steps I'm going to explain in a second. But once the client can imagine herself feeling calm and confident, it creates the so-called prediction error, which is the key element of the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, because the brain is predicting anxiety every time she leaves the house. Now, when the brain's not getting that, the brain has to update that with the new information. And the amazing thing about this is that this ripples back through the whole neural network. So it gets the initial sensitizing event. It gets the limiting beliefs, the behaviors, everything linked to that network gets affected when any one piece in that whole gestalt gets altered. So when a client like Victoria tells me, I've been in the traditional therapy approach, I don't want to talk about it anymore, I have appointments coming up in a few weeks. I would not regress her back. I'm going to give her the change that she comes to see me for. Because the amazing thing is that this is not superficial. Because once Victoria starts, let's say, taking control or feels more confident or calm when she leaves the house, it changes everything. It changes how she feels, her beliefs, how she views the world. And this trickles down to reinform, or at least take the fire away of that traumatic event. Now, as I said earlier, that a lot of us are already doing the therapeutic memory reconsolidation without knowing it, because we might follow a certain protocol that we've been taught, and there's really, really many ways of doing it. But I want to explain to you what are these exact steps. So step number one, and we're going to go into each step in a moment, but step number one is activate the memory. Then we have a 4 to 5 hour window to reconsolidate it back in with a new learning. Then step two is neutralize and make sure the arousal window is at the right intensity. Then we have the prediction error, step number 3. And step number 4 is linking it in. And I'm going to explain each step in details now. So step number 1 is we have to activate the memory. So we have to access the neural network of the problem. Now, the way we do it is we get the client to recall a specific memory or a specific experience. And this, as I said earlier, doesn't have to be the traumatic event. It doesn't have to be the initial sensitizing event. It can be any subsequent event where the client felt similar or the same way. Now, the other thing that is important as well is when we activate a memory or a neural network, it's not enough if a client just talks in general. Because with most of anxiety clients, what they will say is, oh, I feel anxious all the time. It happens to me every time I leave the house. Now, when a client talks like that and says, oh, it happens all the time, it doesn't light up that neural network. The client is not, the nervous system is not reacting. It's not a felt experience. So when we get the client to access that neural network, we need to trigger a nervous system response, something that triggers the brain and activates that neural network. But as I said, the great thing is we don't need to go into the real traumatic event. We can use the last event or a recent event, because the interesting thing is that memory is not just stored in the brain, it's also stored in our nervous system. And this then triggers that fight or flight response. So the way I get my clients to really engage in that neural network is, I say, when was a recent time you felt like that? And then I try for the client not to go too much in a story. I try to get to that cue, to that trigger and be like, okay, well, now I've got that moment. And, I see my clients when they maybe change the way they talk or their voice or their breathing. That's when I'm like, okay, I'm getting close now. And then I say, and this is then the key thing, we then have to speak in present tense. So I might say to the client, okay, well, it's last Tuesday now. You are at the pharmacy and your blood pressure is being measured. What's happening now? Where do you feel it in your body? So I say specifically, where do you feel it in your body right now? Because then I know the client is getting back to that same feeling, because, our brain doesn't know what is imagined and what's happening right now. So if the client really goes into it, it triggers that same nervous system response. That old neural network is engaged. So we are reconstructing it in real time, really. And if we can create that felt experience by then talking in present tense and where do you feel it and what's happening now and really going into the now and in the present moment, we can really activate that same neural network. Now, a lot of people say, oh, but the client could go in the initial sensitizing event. And yes, we could use that. But when you look at the neuroscience of the brain and how our brain is wired, it's almost better to go into a recent memory than to go into a memory from, let's say, 40 years ago. Because when we look at our brain, those recent experiences are a lot easier for the brain to reopen because those connections are actually currently active. So the emotional charge and the automatic responses are close to the surface. And then it's much easier to create that mismatch because the brain looks at that pattern as relevant because it just happened last week. So it's active and it's relevant. And the interesting thing as well is it shows up how that old learning shows up today, because that could be an old learning from childhood. But the interesting thing is, it's not how did it show up in childhood. It's interesting, how does it show up today? How does it reflect the current words, reactions, relationships, experiences? So that's why I always try to get to the client to a recent time, to a current trigger. So that's the first step. We activate the neural network. We get the client into a felt experience. Then we have the second step, which is all about checking in and working with a workable arousal window. So step number 2 could be very simple by, we could do a tapping exercise, or we could do a bilateral stimulation, because we don't want the client to really start being too much into that feeling. Because the moment the client is in a really, really high intensity in that feeling, the brain shuts off. The brain is only there then to survive. They're not safe and regulated. So when they're in fight, flight, freeze, or whatever it may be, the thinking and learning part of the brain switches off and the body moves in protection mode instead of any change work. So I do it very simple. I check in with my clients and I say, okay, we've activated the neural network of the problem. I say, okay, where do you feel it in your body? And let's say the client says, I feel it in my chest, in my breathing. And then I say to the client, very simple, okay, well, from 0 to 10, 10 being intense, where do you feel it? So I get a bit of the gauge from the client, what number the client would give it. But then I also observe the client. I can see how the client is breathing, looking, talking, acting. What are the signs? Is the client really too much in it? And then we do a simple tool to maybe lower that nervous system response into a mid-level. I always say between like 3 and 8 I want to work with, and we can lower it. Because if a client is at 9 or 10, I need to get them out of there because there's no change work happening. Now I like to use the butterfly hug. I've been using it a lot with my clients recently. I don't know if you guys know the butterfly hug, but it goes like this. The client can put their arms around here and then they do a simple tapping. And I show it to them at the beginning of the session, and I actually give them instruction. First of all, I give them options. I show them this version of it, or they can do the same, cross their arms over and tap on their thighs. And that's up to them. I say, okay, do what's more comfortable to you. And then I teach them and I say, there's going to be time in the session today where I'm going to give you the command, resume taps. And you're going to know exactly what I mean. When I say resume taps, you're going to choose whichever one you choose, and I want you to tap. And the reason why I ended up choosing the butterfly technique out of all the tools was because it can be really done while the client is in hypnosis. So I might get them to use that also while the client is in hypnosis with their eyes closed. So it's a really easy tool they can do in any stage. And what the beautiful thing about the butterfly hug is that the client can also use it at home after our session, because Karen, I'm totally on board with what you said. I want to empower my clients because they're going to feel great in the session, but what's going to happen when they step out, when they get triggered? I want them to be empowered that they can do something straight away. And you know what? I can tell you that out of my experience, the first hypnotherapies that taught me tools, that was the biggest breakthrough for me, because I went out of the session knowing that I have something I can do that can stop that feeling straight away. And just knowing that already stopped more half of the anxiety, because the anxiety is about having anxiety, really, most of the time. You're just anxious about having your next panic attack and what's going to happen then. And when we look at the butterfly hug, when we look at the alternating taps, we're stimulating both brain hemispheres at the same time. So we have the bilateral integration, because I'm a fan of bilateral stimulation. Like for anxiety attacks, that's one of the best tools. So we have the bilateral integration. So we are really neutralizing both brain hemispheres out. Both brain sides, when we look at the right and the left brain side, they can communicate effectively. We have the emotional and the logical side. And the great thing is the client can actually keep up the picture of that, let's say, that negative memory while they're doing the tapping. So they have the picture up, and at the same time, they are regulating their nervous system. And that's so powerful, because then we can really start that integration work. So yeah, I try to give my clients in a really, really good, safe arousal window by checking in with them and by looking at them and see what their response is and how they're acting and how they're breathing. And when they're at that right window, the third step is the prediction error. That's the key element of the therapeutic memory reconsolidation. So when we think about our brain operates on predictions. It constantly predicts what happens next based on past experiences. So a brain predicts on what it has learned. Now, a brain doesn't label anything as trauma or non-trauma. We label things like that. The brain has an experience, it learns out of it, and it predicts the same thing will happen next time. So when we look at the client Victoria, her prediction was that every time she leaves the house, she gets a panic attack or she has anxiety. Now, a prediction error, which is, as I said, the key element, happens when something contradicts it. So let's say her prediction is, when she leaves the house, she has anxiety, but now she feels calm and confident, and that is that prediction error in the brain. And the way we create a prediction error is anything that forces the brain to update, whether it's a different emotion, a different belief, a different understanding. It doesn't really matter. Anything that the brain is not predicting, because the brain is forced to update that memory if something changes. And here's the interesting thing. When people sometimes say, oh, talking about it can be really re-traumatizing. Now, when we look at the neuroscience behind it, one thing is saying, oh, talking about it, we're giving it significance and we're giving it the energy. But I want to look at the neuroscience because I love the neuroscience. So when we look at the neuroscience is when we are just recalling a memory. So when we just do the step one, where we activate the memory and we are not creating a prediction error, the brain is actually storing that memory back, but reinforced this time, because we're not forcing the brain to change anything. So we've just activated the memory. The connections are actually now more reinforced. The neural network of the problem has been lit up again, gets stronger, because it's been lit up and it hasn't been changed. So that's why when we look at the neuroscience, why reliving and talking about the trauma and not doing anything different or not changing anything makes it actually stronger. So that's where the prediction error is the key element. So we have to put something in, and that could be in many ways, again, whether it's in a hypnotic way or in a conversational way. It could be saying to the client, all right, well, close your eyes. It's last Tuesday now. How would you like to feel instead? And we spin it and we link it in. Or we can even create a prediction error through education. So a lot of the clients that I see think that anxiety is part of their identity. They think they're always going to be an anxious person. Now, even if they overcome their daily panic attacks, and I was one of them, I had that belief because my environment, everyone said to me, but you're just an anxious person. That's just who you are. You're just always going to be anxious. And I believe that. So the funny thing was when I didn't have daily panic attacks and I was still worrying and overthinking, I actually thought that that's the best I could achieve because I'm just an anxious person, I guess. And then one hypnotherapist that I saw started talking about misconception about anxiety. And one of them was that anxiety is not your identity. It's a learned habitual behavior. So alone with that information, if we have that information, I use intake forms specifically to find out how my clients think about their problem. Do they think it's a learned behavior? Do they think it's an identity? Do they think they're going to have it forever? We can create the first prediction error just through educating them and saying, hey, it's a learned habitual behavior. Because in that moment, their brain is like going, wow, I thought I will have that forever or a little bit of that forever. And then the final step of the therapeutic memory reconsolidation is we have to link it in. So when we say linking it in, what we have to do is we have to use the memory that we used for the activation. So we asked the client in the predictionary, how would you like to feel instead? And she says calm and confident. And I say, okay, well, where do you feel it in your body? So again, I create a felt experience. And then I say, okay, well, it's last Tuesday now. You're going to the pharmacy, you're walking in, but this time you're feeling calm and at ease, or whatever the client's words. So that's a key thing. We always have to use the client's words. So I use that memory that I used for step 1, but this time we recreated with a different response of the client. So again, we then talk in present. Imagine it's last week now. You're going to the pharmacy, and this time you're feeling calm and at ease. And what happens next? And we'll spin it in a couple of times. And then we can go a step further. So rather than just like working on how the client sees that one memory, we then can generalize the change, and we can say, all right, well, think of a couple of other moments where you would like to feel more calm and confident. And I might have that from the intake form, or I might get the client to think about that while they're in hypnosis, or I might say it while they're in hypnosis, next time when this happens. And then we can go one step further, how I did with Victoria. So I said to her, it's 3 weeks now, and you are attending those appointments. But this time you're walking into these appointments feeling like this and this and this. So we can generalize the change, and we can create that future memory with that client. And I love to create a future memory, because what it helps our brain to rehearse when a trigger comes. Because otherwise, if there's a bit of a blank spot for the brain might go back to that old prediction, or when a brain always fills in the gaps. So we want the brain to fill in that gap now with a positive way of feeling, or a positive way of going into the next situation. So those are the steps of the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, and anyone can incorporate them into their own process. And as I said, most of us are already doing them, but when you understand the steps and maybe like tweak the order of the session, and do it with intention, it's really amazing, because when you understand the process behind it. So what I started doing, and that's just a little tip for everyone, let's say I have a client with anxiety. I do not talk general about anxiety. I straight away at the beginning of the session say to the client, all right, tell me a specific time you felt like that. I want to activate the neural network of the problem at the beginning of the session, because then everything that I talk in that session falls into that window. While before, I might have said, all right, tell me a little bit about anxiety, and maybe since when have you been having, how does it show up? I never went to activate the memory straight away. Sometimes I didn't even activate it really in the session. So by doing that, and then I might talk about the myths and misconception about anxiety, I've already created the therapeutic memory reconsolidation without any hypnotic process, just by activating the memory and creating a prediction error through education. So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways for me when I learned that was, how do I structure my session? And I didn't have to learn a new process for that. I just thought about, okay, well, how can I guess, change the order of the way I'm doing things? And that's the basis of all my work. So when we talk about my SHINE protocol, which that's the SHINE book, and when you look at the letter SHINE, each letter stands for an important part in the process. So it's 5 letters. So when we look at the first letter, S, safe. So it's creating a safe space for the client, because at the end of the day, most clients come, and by the time people see me, they already have severe anxiety, because usually, us hypnotherapists are not often their first resort. We're often their last resort. So they're often quite desperate when they reach out, and they might be like, oh, I'm feeling so anxious all the time. And so then it's my job to make them feel safe and calm their nervous system down. Because if they're in that heightened state, change work is really impossible or really hard. So session 1, letter S, is making the client feel safe. And I say to the client, you can tell me as much or as little as you want about the experience. If a client has never spoken about the trauma, and some people say to me, oh, I've been so ashamed, it's a black dark secret, I don't want to talk about it. I say, that's totally fine. If at any point in the next few weeks, or at any time you feel like you want to talk about it, I'm there for you. but it's not changing the outcome of the session. Now, one way I do create a lot of rapport with my clients is I want to make them feel understood. I want to make them feel understood because I can tell you, I never felt understood when I was going through the traditional therapy approach. I felt like I was just a number to them, and they looked in a book, and then they looked up my symptoms, and then they were like, oh, that's what you got. So I create rapport with my clients by telling them how it was when I was feeling anxious, by telling them how it was when I experienced trauma and how it affected me. And specifically, when I talk to clients about how anxiety played out in my life, every single client says, oh my God, that's exactly how I feel. And the moment they say that, I have rapport. They are like, she understands me. Now, I understand, and I tell my students that not everyone has experienced trauma and not everyone has experienced anxiety, and you can still be a great practitioner. But I think one great tip to create rapport, if you haven't experienced it yourself, you can say, well, most of my clients feel like that. Or most of the people that come and see me feel like that. So you don't have to use you as an example if you haven't experienced it, but you can use your clients and say they all feel like that. Again, they feel like, oh my God, she's worked with people like me. She understands what I'm going through. So that's, I think, one of the key things. And as we said earlier, I'm looking at the effects. I'm not looking at the story. I'm looking at the effects. Okay, why have you reached out to me today? What is it that is holding you back? And when I go back to Victoria, the first thing I worked on with her was the anxiety. We didn't even touch the lack of confidence and all of that stuff that was also a result of the trauma, or maybe even before, who knows? But I know that one thing was anxiety. So I just focused my first session on clearing up the anxiety and easing the anxiety and working on that, putting her nervous system out of that fight or flight mode that I think she has been in for years. So creating rapport, creating a safe place. I always teach my clients tools. As I told you, Karen, I agree on that, empowering our clients. I love bilateral stimulation. As I said, I've been using the butterfly hug more now, but bilateral stimulation was the tool that changed my life. When I learned that, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I had a panic attack, I used that tool, and within 50 seconds, I had no more anxiety. When I learned that tool, I went home that evening and I'm like, yeah, right, that's going to work. How is that going to work? Because anxiety looked like a massive problem for me. And I'm like, how is this going to work? Like in my mind. And it works. It's an amazing tool. So I worked on the anxiety. And with, obviously I do the first hypnosis. Now, my first hypnosis in the first session is quite short. I do a lot of education. I explain to my clients what's going on. Why they're acting like this. I do a little bit of neuroscience in a simple way. My clients love that. They're like, oh my God, that's understanding now. Because when we explain to the client, for example, that that's your brain just running on old patterns, they go out for them, oh my God, I'm broken. To, hey, your brain's actually been doing what it's meant to do, not to your benefit right now, but we can change that. And a bit of education and a bit of making the client feel like, hey, it's okay, and I'm not broken, and it can be fixed, and this is what's happening, I think is key to healing. And then what my clients get, they get a recording, like a hypnosis recording after each session. Now, it's not the recording of the session. I don't record the session to give to them. It's a generic hypnosis recording that I've written. It's with my voice. I've recorded it, and I give it to them. Now, there's a couple of reasons why I give it to them. Number one, by the time we have session 2, and let's say they've listened to it, I tell them to listen to it once a day, and I say you can listen to it at night as you fall asleep. Even if they listen to it 2 or 3 times a day, they're safe with my voice, they feel anchored with my voice. By the time we have session 2, they are just going hypnosis so easy and so much faster and so much deeper because they are just so anchored to listening to my voice. Another thing is, a lot of my clients have sleep problems. So I tell them, listen to it at night as you fall asleep. I don't even care if you fall asleep to it straight away. And most clients report that to me. They're like, I'll listen to you for 2 minutes. I don't even know what you're saying. Some clients listen to me a half a year later. I've had one client message me, I still listen to you. I don't even care what you say as long as I hear your voice. And I do feel like a lot of hypnotherapists are not taking advantage of that, of giving a client a simple recording, how that really changes the change work and the hypnosis in the following sessions, because a lot of people are worried they can't be hypnotized. People think they can't visualize enough. People think they can't focus or concentrate or sit still. That eliminates that all. So by the time we have session 2, where I do the H, I call it the healing part, they are already so easy to be in hypnosis. They already feel so safe and comfortable with me. And when we look at the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, we rewrite the implicit memory that the client has. Now, when we look at explicit and implicit memories, an explicit memory is when I say to you, what did you have for dinner last night? An implicit memory is something that is formed without awareness. It's formed unconscious. And it's also recalled unintentional. So it's recalled by a certain trigger, by a certain stimuli, by a word, and it triggers that nervous system response. Now, when we look at the client, for example, Victoria, her implicit learning was, it's not safe to leave the house, because when she left the house, let's say the traumatic experience happened. All the subsequent experiences, when she left the house, she had a panic attack. She felt nervous. She maybe had someone approach her, didn't feel comfortable. All of that led to one solution, which was to stay home, because that kept her safe. So the implicit learning, let's say, is, when I leave the house, I have a panic attack, it's not safe. So with the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, and with that step, I was able to rewrite that and start rebuilding the ability to go out and leave the house. So that Victoria not only can attend those appointments, but maybe can go out shopping again, grocery shopping, or maybe have a coffee with someone or socialize again. And we did that in the session, and in the second session, actually. What she did afterwards was she went to the supermarket for the very first time in I don't know how many years. And this is exactly what we worked on. We worked on their ability to leave the house again. And I backed it up straight away with that experience. And I'm going to talk about in a moment that I get my clients to do an action after each session. Or maybe I'll talk about it now. So I get my clients to do an action after each session, because I want to reinforce the change we've made. So I don't tell my clients what they have to do, because I'm not telling them what to do. We work it out together. So I would have said to Victoria, okay, well, what's one thing that you can do straight away after this session or in the next couple of hours that you really want to do, that you've been too scared to do, and kind of that's a little bit in relation to the session. And she said, all right, I want to go grocery shopping. So then I'm like, great. Now I know I've equipped her with a tool. I know that if anything happens, she can use the bilateral stimulation or another tool I taught her. And then it's also my job to set my clients up for success. So I would have said to her, okay, well, but write down a list of 5 things to get, and let's work out a time where it's not the busiest. Because the last thing you want then that to backfire, and she walks in with no list at the busiest time, and then it doesn't work. So it's really about setting our clients up for success when we get them to do an action. So we worked out the time, we worked out the list. And can you imagine the excitement? That's something that she hasn't been able to do for so many years, she was suddenly able to do. What that creates motivation. It creates belief that everything else we're doing is going to work. They have those tangible results. And it gives them a beautiful dopamine hit. And we all know dopamine is so powerful for creating a new pattern. It's that praise, it's that excitement. And then that excitement is like, oh my God, I want to do it again. So that's what I give my clients an action to do after each session. Then we got step 3, which is inspire forgiveness. I know everyone has probably their own forgiveness process. What I want to say about forgiveness is that I always look about how my clients look at forgiveness first. I want to know their perspective. Because a lot of my clients come and say, I can never forgive, and I will never forgive what that person did to me. And I understand, because a lot of my clients have been raped. Now, I want to know their perspective first, because I am not going to force them into forgiving anyone. That's not what I'm there to do. I want to try to get them to say that they want to do it on their own terms. So the way I do it is I talk about, okay, maybe let's talk about what forgiveness means. It doesn't mean condoning. It doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean we have to write a letter to anyone and say, hey, I've forgiven you. The forgiveness process is entirely for them. We might even talk about that there's benefits in forgiving. So I'll educate them a little bit about forgiveness. And then I say, you know what? Some people say, you know what, yes, I can see it and you're right. I really want to let that resentment go because it's just affecting me. They shift on their own. Sometimes I say to the client, you know what? How about we say letting go? It's just a different word, but you know how powerful that is? How many people say, I can let go? I can't forgive, but I can let go. All right, I'll go with letting go then. And I've even done that, you know what? Let's forgive the event instead of the person. That has also helped some clients. But I shift them into them saying, yes, I want to do it. Not me saying you have to do it. Then we've got session 4, which is letter N, which is negative beliefs. So that's where I start talking about limiting beliefs. And I tell them the week before what limiting beliefs are, because not everybody knows what the terminology means. So I say, let's write down your limiting beliefs. I explain to them a limiting belief can be about themselves, about people around them, about the world. And I say the best way to find your limiting beliefs is monitor your self-talk and your self-thoughts. What do you constantly say or think to yourself? So they have them ready for that session. And then again, I educate them about limiting beliefs. I trigger that nervous system response straight away. I'm like, okay, when was the last time you felt that? When is the last time you didn't feel good enough? And they tell me that story and they go into the emotional response and the feeling. And then I do a session on limiting beliefs. Karen, how much time do I have left?
You have about 10 minutes.
Beautiful. Perfect. Awesome. So one way as well of with the limiting beliefs is, sometimes it's interesting when you tell a client, a lot of our limiting beliefs are from childhood and they weren't used in the first place. And they might say, yeah, that's what my mom always used to say. It's not really their story. So sometimes just that change in awareness where they realize, oh, it's not even my own story, it's my mom's story. And I educate them how limiting beliefs create our reality. Because we subconsciously act according to our beliefs quite often. If someone, let's say, has a belief that everyone is going to abandon them, let's say every partner, and they might have a partner that has abandoned them, and maybe their mom was abandoned, but then they meet a really, really nice person that actually wants to be with them, they might subconsciously sabotage that relationship because in their mind, everyone is going to abandon them. So they might sabotage that relationship by maybe being controlling or constantly checking or making the partner constantly feel like they've done something wrong to the point where the partner says, you know what, I'm out. And then they're going to be like, well, see, I told you, everybody abandons me. So I do tell them the power of beliefs and how they really create our reality and how that's what we see in front of us constantly. We don't see the things, like when we look at confirmation bias and our brain looks for all the evidence where this belief comes true and ignores all the evidence that doesn't, align with that belief. And then we have the final letter, which is the letter E. That's my favorite one. It's about empowering our clients. Now, that is not a session itself. That go through each and every single session. So I teach my clients in each session, I call them the rapid reshape tools. That's how I've named them, where they can stop any kind of pattern, negative self-talk, emotional response, whatever it is in an instant. Now, I felt like that was lacking when I was going through therapy. I didn't have any strategies that actually really worked other than try to read something, have a sip of water, walk outside, ground. I didn't have anything really, really powerful that worked, especially when I was having a panic attack. Now, when we're looking at those tools, it's empowering our clients. But again, because I love the neuroscience, it is really creating that long-lasting change in the brain, because a trigger is the perfect opportunity to rewire the brain. As much as I think we all don't like getting triggered in moments, it's a great opportunity to actually rewire the brain. And I'm going to use anxiety as an example. So when we look at anxiety, it's a learned habitual behavior. It's a neural network in the brain. So neurons that are stuck together, that are firing together over. And every time we're doing anxiety, we're lighting up that neural network. And every time we're lighting up that neural network, what happens? It gets stronger. The glue gets stronger, the neural network gets stronger, to the point where it feels like it's happening automatic. And that's what most of anxiety clients would say. They're like, oh my God, I've got no control over it. It just happens like this. That's how it felt to me. Now, why? Because our brain likes the least amount of energy and effort. So if that's something the brain has been doing, it's much easier to keep doing it. So when we look at, okay, how can we overcome that? We have to put up a roadblock. And this is what those rapid reshape tools are for. So when we're putting up a roadblock and the brain can't light up that neural network, the brain has to detour. So we are forcing the brain to detour. When we're not letting the brain light up that network, the brain has to go another way. So the brain has to light up different regions. And we create the so-called counter neuroplasticity. So this old network gets weaker, we're setting a new network and we're making that stronger. Because at the end of the day, the same principle goes in the other way. The stronger that network is, eventually it will become automatic and it will become the default network. And what happens as well is when we're not accessing that network, the negative one, let's say the anxiety network, eventually the glue gets weaker and weaker and weaker. And whether it separates or disappears, or we just say it's overgrown or less used, but the opposite is true as well. And that's the key point that I tell my clients when I teach them the tools. I say to them, now that you're aware of that, I want you to understand, if you're not using the tool and if you're just letting the anxiety go and you're having feeling anxious or you're worrying or you're overthinking for 10, 15 minutes, you are lighting up that neural network. And it works because the clients are like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to make it stronger. And it's the truth. So I'm very truthful or very honest with my clients because I want the change for them. That's my passion. So
isn't it amazing, Connie, when we're honest with them and tell them what's really going on, how much of an impact that has? It resonates, right? It resonates. This is what's going on, and it's empowering. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm wondering if you have a moment that we can have Giselle ask her question. She's been waiting very patiently. Will you unmute yourself and ask your question? There you go.
Oh, thank you. I was just wondering to know how many sessions do you know your client needs, and how do you define the structure of those sessions? Thank you.
So usually I work with my clients for 5 sessions. So that's the base program. Sometimes clients afterwards say, hey, I've overcome anxiety. Now I want to improve in my job. And I might have a couple of more sessions with them. But the main thing is the 5 sessions. So we have the 4 letters, the forgiveness, the healing of the implicit learning, the limiting beliefs, the forgiveness. And then I have a 5th session where I just do a cleanup at the end, what else has come up for them. But I'm also not very rigid in my program. Sometimes I do the forgiveness before I do that process. It's really about what the client needs. But for me, if the client really puts in the work for those 5 weeks, meaning they listen to the recordings I give them, they use the tools, they can see a great change that actually sticks in 5 weeks. So this is where I'm coming in with repetition and reinforcement. I get my clients to do the task, so they have the real life evidence. And I get them to use the tools, the recordings, repetition. And by that time, the 5 weeks are over, they can have created a new habit. And that's what I want. I want this to be the last thing for my clients in order to overcome that specific problem. So I give my clients a lot of tools and recordings. I actually have a hybrid program, so they can log into an online portal where they have the recordings, the tools that I teach them. In fact, there's more tools that I can teach in a session that I give to them. They can log in. It's part of the program. Each week, a new week opens up. So I have that structured in 5 weeks. I can give them a lot more than I can do in 5 sessions. Obviously, if I teach them everything, I would need maybe 12 to 14 sessions. I teach them my favorite tools, but what's my favorite tool might not be there. So in the program, they can go through the instructions of the other tools. Each week, a new hypnosis recording, each week, a little bit about education about something. And they have lifetime access to the online part of the program. Because I actually teach them, if you can use, let's say, that technique for that problem, you can use it for that belief and for that as well. Because, to be honest with you, especially overcoming the fear of public speaking, I used my own tools. I'm not just teaching clients tools and be like, oh, well, have fun with them. But I use those tools on myself. Yes, 10 years ago, I used them for daily panic attacks. Now I use them when I travel the world and present. And the way, Karen, you said it, it's funny because I actually had this belief up until about 4 years ago. Public speaking is never going to be my thing. That's just nothing for me. That's just not for me. And that's fine. So when I traveled to HypnoThoughts for the first time to present, I actually just went there to overcome the fear. Because I was like, I tell my clients to do all these actions after the session. And who am I if I don't do it? But I just went there with, I'm going to do it once, and that's fine if I don't like it. You know, not everybody needs to be a public speaker. And now, I travel the world and speak, which is so far sometimes still weird for me because I'm like, I just had this belief for, 37 years of my life.
But it speaks to the reality. If you use the tools, they work. If you don't use the tools, they don't. Why not use them? Because that's what you want.
And I tell my clients that when they sign up with me, I'm like, you're going to get tools, you're going to get hypnosis recordings to listen to, you have that login. I'm honest with them, what I require from them as a client, because they need to do the work. I can give them the stuff, but if they don't apply it, then it's nothing we can do, I guess.
This has been beautiful. We really, really, really appreciate you. I wish that we had another half hour because I'll bet there are other questions. Please, please, please look in the chat because if you have questions, you've got Connie's email, you've got contact information, you can grab her book. All of the stuff is there and it's just exceptional information. Connie, thank you so much. Now,
thank you for having me.
Now is the time that we want everybody to. Is there any? Next, I want to tell you, next month we will hear from Duff McDuffie, and it's not trance dance. That's my book, but it's ecstatic trance, right, Michael? Yeah, okay. And Duff will be with us next month, so please join us then. It's always good to see you, and please open your microphones up now, and let's give Connie the send off she deserves. I love you, my friend.
Thank you, Connie.
Thank you. Nice job.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Karen and Michael as well.
Thank you, Karen and Michael, Connie.
And Connie, now I know where I knew you from, HypnoThoughts. So I was like, I know.
Oh, yeah.
See you next month.
Bye, Karen. Thank you.